Let's go. Game time. The standard is the standard. That's our motto. That's our creed. All right, everybody, welcome to the Better Baby Daddy podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, John Laxman.
And I am your other co-host, Kelly Burgess.
And today we are joined by the positive and powerful Miss Shemika.
Hi, everybody.
Miss Shemika, can you tell us why you are joining us on the Better Baby Daddy podcast today?
I'm coming on. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm coming here today just to talk about my experience with parenting, co-parenting, and just my opinion on solo parenting.
All right, great. So can you give our viewers, our listeners, a little background about your co-parenting and your solo parenting journey?
Okay. Yes. So I have been a mother for a really long time. I've been a single mom for 29 years. I have a 29-year-old child. Um, and from 2 weeks old, when he was 2 weeks, I have been a single parent, parenting him. And it has been a journey. Um, I know parenting in itself is a journey because no one gets a book on how to be a parent, but the solo parenting part, just our single parenting part, I'm gonna say has been a journey of a long journey. I'm still on I'm still on it, but a long journey.
So, Shemika, as we talked a little bit pre-show, we've had some single moms on. Our platform is generally directed towards dads who are not with the mom or dads who are not in the home. And our hope is that we can drop some nuggets to them that help them navigate that space better, so they are better fathers and better co-parents. As we were talking, you mentioned that, man, you feel really, really strongly about the single parent role being ideal for you. And talk a little bit about how you arrived at that space and what have been some, lessons you've learned along that journey as a single mom.
So single parenting was not never in a plan of mine. I wanted the two family household and child, and that's something that I really really wanted, and I felt like my children deserved to have that. How I found myself in that place is it just kind of happened. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't something that was thought through. It just kind of happened. um I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question you said?
Just what are some lessons that you've learned along that way? So let's back it up to the beginning. So, um, certainly there's a lot. Relationships are complicated.
Yeah.
And then when two people make a child, it's the best hope, as you said, man. Nobody wakes up and says, I just want to be alone on this journey as a as a parent. You meet somebody, there's a vibe. You say, hey, things happen. We create a child, and the idea is that we're going to do this thing together. But then things happen, right? And then
Yeah.
as a lady, my experience has been once a lady kind of switches in her mind that I got to do this thing alone, she's a different lady at that point. And so, what are some of the things, if or talk about that, like when you said, hey, I can see I got to do this alone, I'm going to do it alone. And then what are some lessons that you learned from there?
So yeah, I figured that came very early on that, I had to do this alone. I immediately went to school, finished school, went to college because I knew that financially I would be the person that would be providing for my child. I really didn't look for handouts. I'm gonna be honest with you. I really didn't. I didn't really ask for too much help. Just I don't know. I think that's just a part of me. I really just didn't ask for too much help. I just, went to school, finished college, and just said, hey, this is just going to be me. I was talking to my son. It's just going to be me and you from now on. Um, one of the lessons that I've learned is that sometimes, even though the dad is not present in the house, even for day-to-day stuff, still include him in the day-to-day stuff. Still call him and say, "This is what happened. This is, I need you to support me with this. I need for you to have the your input on that." And the reason I say that is because even though you can have, you can be, I'm gonna just say, a strong person. You could again be educated. You still need that support from your co-parent. You still need that support, right? Sometimes, especially with school, I found when my son was in school, like I really needed the support from his dad with just making sure that my son understood that we were like a team. Even though we weren't together, we were still a team, which is important. Education is important. You have to go to school every day. So one of the lessons that I learned is to include his dad into the day to day, even when he wasn't, because he had weekends. My son went to see him on the weekends. But even that day, that Monday through Friday, when he wasn't scheduled to go over there, still call him up. Like when you got stuff going on, still include him in what's going on at that time because it kind of it gives the I don't want to say, I don't like to say the both aside, but it just kind of gives the united front that, we are on the same team. We want the same thing for you and we want the best for you. And, sometimes if it's just the mother saying that, especially when you have a son, it doesn't quite, can, don't go over. Or I don't know if they receive it in that way, I should say. They don't receive it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it hits different when it's coming from a dad. It
Yeah.
does.
Mm-hmm.
So, one question, I'm gonna turn the next question over to John. Did you just kind of come to that realization that, hey, we're not gonna be together as a couple, but from the beginning, we are going to co-parent. It sounds like y'all work out a good co-parenting thing, or did you kind of evolve to that, including him in? Because it's been our experience that that's been a journey for a lot of moms to get to that point where, hey, we on equal footing as parents, even though you and I aren't together.
No, we had to evolve to that. That was something that it was again, because I'm kind of the type of person that I don't really need any help. I got everything. I can do this, I can do that. I don't really need any help. And then when I saw that my son needed that support, right? As a parent, you sometimes, well, a lot of times you have to step outside of yourself and realize this is just about the kid. It's not really about who's right, who's wrong. This person did you wrong. That person did you wrong. It's not about that. It is about making sure that your child has every single thing they need to get to the next part of their life. So that was kind of, it evolved to that because in the beginning it wasn't like that. In the beginning it was shifted. It was me making all of the decisions, me saying this was the best thing for him. And then I'm gonna say about when he was about 10, then that's when I really think like, wait, he really needs his dad. He needs his dad's input, just not on the weekends, not every 2 weeks, but he needs his dad like throughout the week. Like he needs to speak to him. He needs to know that he loves him. He needs to know that he cares about him. So that we kind of grew to that place, but it wasn't like that at first. It was not. It was not.
Very interesting. But also very normal in terms of a co-parenting dynamic. I can remember my beginning stages of co-parenting where it was chaotic
Mhm.
and I don't even know. There are a lot of other words that I won't say right now, but we've evolved to a beautiful spot where our dynamic is amazing and we're able to work through a lot of different things. But what I want to go to is something specifically that we've heard a lot of single mothers come on here and talk about, and it's this concept of I got this. I don't need anything else. I can handle this myself, and that interests me to no avail. Um, did you develop that through the process, through those first 10 years, or was that something that's always been inside of you? Or was it developed as a child, that consistent resiliency, that determination, that motivation to just be out there and do what you need to do and just get things done?
that was something that has just always been in me. I'm an only child, so I always did everything by myself. I don't have any siblings. Well, I had siblings on my dad's side, but I didn't meet them until I was like in my 30s. So I just grew up an only child. So it was naturally in me to just say, "Hey, I can do this. I got this. I don't really need any help." Then, um, I kind of saw my son struggling a bit. You know, I will always say boys need their dads. I don't care what age they are. They need to be around their fathers. They need to spend time with their dads. Then when I kind of saw that, um, just the weekends just wasn't, he needed more than just the weekend. Then that's when it really just motivated me to say, to call him up, like, hey, we need to just put how you feel about me aside. I put how I feel about you aside, and let's just focus on making sure that our son grow up to just be like a man, like a good man, a well-rounded person that just has the tools that he needs when he gets to be an adult. I didn't want him to grow up and have resentment to me. I didn't want him to grow up to have resentment to his dad, because his dad loved him. His dad loved him. So that was, for me, that's what made me turn to, reaching out to him more because I just see my son struggling and I know that that's what he needed.
Mm, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, as John said, we have heard that as a common theme, and then the second part of your story we've heard as a common theme is like, hey, I'm a mom, I'm a woman, I'm a naturally come at it a certain way, and I realized my son needed his father to help shepherd him to these next phases that he's going to.
Hmm.
Um, can you talk a little bit about, and John's question kind of touched on a little bit how you arrived at, your stance as a single mom. Talk a little bit about you know, the things that shaped you as a parent. We catch a lot of stuff from our own parents. If we have girlfriends or guys that are kind of in that same season with us, we'll catch some things from them. Talk about what shaped you as a mom, at the beginning, the adolescent years and now as an adult parent.
But yes, so my dad was not present in my life. I remember this is like a story. I remember this like so vividly. I remember I was in elementary school and I had a friend named Chanel, and I said, I wanted to do something after school. I can't quite remember. And I was like, well, come on, let's go. I had a plan. I was like, let's do this. And she was like, I gotta ask my dad. And I was like, for what? You know what I mean? Like I didn't know that we had to ask dad because I didn't have a dad, and none of my cousins had dads. So it was like just literally we only saw our moms. We only None of us had dads growing up. None of me, my cousins. So that kind of shaped me a little bit. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, if he's here, he's here. If he's not, he's not. Because I didn't have that experience with my dad growing up because I did not. And it wasn't until later in life that him and I connected. Um, me and my dad connected, but growing up, I can't tell you anything. I couldn't tell you anything about him. So then when I had my son, of course, it was just like, I want him to have his dad. I want to be, make sure that he's around. Unfortunately, once he was 2 weeks old, the relationship broke up. And then he went his separate way. And then I didn't see him until my son was like 9 months old. From 2 weeks old to 9 months, there was no contact. So there was no helping me with anything. He wasn't there. He wasn't present. He didn't help me financially. At that point, I had already decided and, figured that it was just me from here on out. Not anything that I planned, but it was just me. Um, so then when he then came back around, I was just like, what are you here? Like, what do you want? So I took that stance and was there for many years. I was there, you know, and really wasn't reaching out to him. He really wasn't reaching out to me, and it wasn't until so that kind of shaped me. That kind of not having a dad in my life was, like it was. I don't want to say normal, but it was normal. Um, it wasn't normal, but it was my normal, I should say, of not having a man present in my life.
Mm. So I mean, you alluded to this somewhat already, but not having your dad present really eventually focused you in terms of being intentional about incorporating your son's father into his life. Would you say that was part of that process?
That was part of the process because I knew that it was needed. And I wanted him to have that. I didn't want him to not have that. It wasn't anything that he, when we separated at 2 weeks old, it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted. Um, but it just happened. So then when he decided to, split, it was just like, okay, all right, no problem. I've been here before. I know what to do. You just got to take care of yourself and take care of your kids because I saw my mom doing it. And that was just it. Just take care of my son. So, but um, what I will say is that I wish that it wasn't like that. I wish that before he was 10, well, I think it was like 9, but I wish that he was more present, and when he was a little bit younger. I feel like it shaped my son's attitude a bit as well. Um, um, I think it had a lot to do with his attitude and, the way that he would respond and things like that. So, but then it got better, once he did come around. Like, I saw a difference in who he was and my son and my son. And I'm glad that we was able to like push past the feelings that we had and just focus more on him and just, being good parents to him.
I got a quick follow up to what you were just saying there. And I'm wondering what was the tipping point that you and your son's father finally said, okay, we got to do this thing together, or I need to be more involved, or I need him more involved. Because it sounds like, I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but there was like a long period of time, and I think you said up until about 10, where he wasn't really there consistently. So
Yeah.
what was that point where you were like, all right, we got to figure this out? Or he was like, hey, I'm here.
My son had made a comment and he had said, um, I think it was like a school thing. And he had said, he was like pointing out to us, he was like, he has a mom and a dad. And then he was like pointing out children in school. And he was like, he has a mom and a dad. And he has a mom and a dad. And I remember I was like driving home. We were driving home from the event. And I said, and that's important to you? And he said, yeah, that's important to me. And I was like, do you feel like they're better than you? Do you feel, I said, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like they are more special than you? And do you feel that way? And he didn't respond. He said, I don't know for that, but it was just he was like pointing out children who had a mother and a father. And he's like, he has a mom and a dad, and he has a mom and a dad, and that kind of like that like crushed me. That like like that was just like because you can give your child everything. You can have the best education. You could be a doctor. You could be a lawyer, and you can give your child every single thing they want. I mean, fine, if it costs money, you can do it. But the one thing you cannot do is if the other parent is not interested or if you can't make them be in your child's life. You cannot. You can't force somebody to do it. And then at that moment, I just remember saying whatever it takes, right? Whatever it takes for me to, have his dad present, whatever it takes for me to get them to reconnect, whatever it takes, because it was like devastating to me to even, he was just like, he has a mom and a dad. And I was like, okay, like, okay. And he was like, she has a mom and a dad. And he was like pointing out people, like in his school, he was like pointing at them. And then I asked him, I said, how do you know they have a mom and a dad? I said, how do you know that? And he was like, because both of them come to the school to see them. And he was like, his mom and his dad come up here to see him. And he was like pointing out the children. And it like really frustrated me. I'm going to be honest with you. And I remember I reached out to his aunt on his dad's side. And I told her, I was like, please get in contact with him. Please tell him that I don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. I just want to focus on, my son. And I call him DJ. I was like, I just want to focus on DJ. And that's it. If you can please call me. And but it was like from that day on, whatever I needed to do to make sure that his dad was present, that's what I was, that was my focus.
Thank you for sharing that. That is a
Wow.
tough story. Can you remind the listeners about how old your son was when he made that observation and said that to you?
He was like either 9 or 10 around that age, like
9
9
or
or
10.
10. Yeah,
And so fourth or fifth grade. And it is
yeah.
amazing how observant or what, the kind of calculus the kids are doing in their mind. Um, you said that you were really hurt by it. Were you surprised that he was observing things that way?
I really got, and a bit surprised. Yeah, I was surprised because again, um, yeah, my son has had he had a really good childhood. You know what I mean? Like he got a lot of stuff. He, I didn't think that that was even something that was on his mind. You know what I mean? I didn't think that that was something he was even paying attention to because he didn't lack in different areas, right? So it wasn't like I don't want to compare myself to other people, but it wasn't. He had a pretty good childhood. We went on trips. He, got a lot of stuff. So I wasn't even thinking that he was like, where's my dad at? Something that was on his mind. But I know even if they don't mention it, it's on their mind, right?
Mhm.
It's on their mind. Um, and so when he said that, I just like it don't matter what it takes. Doesn't matter, I just want him present, for our son.
Well, congrats to you for stepping up and witnessing, and being observant as much as your son was observant that, hey, something needs to change. And I want to fast forward just slightly here, and that's to that reintegration process. So, what was that like for your son, and what was it like for you?
uh, that was like me just keep going to his house and also to connecting with his aunt and his great aunt and stuff like that. And when they had events, even though things wasn't really the best, things in the best between me and his family, but just letting them know, hey, I'm not over here to fight y'all. I'm not over here to argue with y'all. I'm just here to make sure that my son is present. I don't want him to feel awkward. I'm here with him just to emotionally support him until he gets to know y'all. You know what I mean? Until he gets to, feel comfortable around y'all and stuff like that. So I would just go over to any event they had, I would go. Anytime his anything was going over there, I was present. I was making sure that he was present. It's really tough when there's bad blood. It's really tough to even put yourself in that situation. But if you um I don't ever want to question like if somebody loves their child or not. But I'm just saying, like if you really love your kids and it's about your child, you know, that's it. Just go around, and just it's the only thing you can do is just say hi. If that's it. If you walk in the room and you've been fighting with people, if you can just walk in and say hi and sit down and be quiet, and that's it. That's what I had to do because, like I said, it was really tough. Um, I didn't get support or help from them, so I was kind of bitter towards his family too, just because no one helped me at all. I was a young mom. I didn't, even when I used to reach out to his aunt, to his grandmother, they wasn't really trying to help me at all. And then once, I got to that point where I just wanted my son to have his dad. When I went over there and I talked to him, I said, hey, I'm just here for my son. I'm just trying to make sure that he is integrated back into your family and that everybody gets along and so he feels comfortable. And I asked for their permission. I said, is it okay if we move in this direction, right? And then I remember his grandmother was like, yes, of course. I'm glad to see that she's grown and She said, I'm glad to see that you've grown, and of course you can come around. And I was like, okay, all right. And then from that point on, that's just what it was. You know what I mean? So when they had an event, I would go around. And I would just go there to support my son until he got to know his paternal side of his family. And then eventually, once he got older and then he went to college, I didn't go around, but it wasn't just like one time either. It was like
Hmm.
years of having to build that relationship between myself and his paternal side. That was something that wasn't just overnight. It was not overnight, but that's what I had to do to, um, you know, get him over there.
Yeah. Hey, kudos to you. And that's that gritty trench work, relationship work that you have to do.
Hmm.
That's 2 or 3 levels removed from you and the parent. And we tell the guys all the time, like, you got to get your mental ready for that kind of work on your end. Um,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of maturity. You call a little smoke from grandma when she says, hey,
Hmm.
glad to see that you grew, you grown. But
Hmm.
that's swallowing the pride and extending the olive branch and saying, hey, I'm just trying to do the best for everybody. Should agree we want the best for the child. And then it just calms things down and lets,
Hmm.
the kid be a kid again.
Yeah.
Kudos to you. That's some of the hardest work, that's some of the hardest
Yeah.
work. I have a question about 2 things. Because there was that tension between you and the dad side, and you alluded to that you had some bitterness about the lack of help from them.
Yeah.
How did you control the narrative that you told your child about his dad?
To be honest with you, I never really talked about him. And I think that that was my bitterness, right? Because a lot of times I noticed that, and I don't like to really like get into like gender, but I noticed a lot of times when women sit around and they talk negatively about the child's father, they still love them and they still are in love, right? And for me, I was like, I'm not talking about her. Like, I'm not wasting my time about this man. Like, no, I'm not. So I didn't really talk negatively about his dad. I just never brought him up. You know what I mean? Like I never brought him up. I never mentioned him. It wasn't. I never talked about him. I never cussed him out. It just, I just never. He was really just like non-existent. So I didn't. I didn't talk about him negatively to my son. Um, we still don't have conversations about them, but now not necessarily because the bitterness I had towards him, just because, we're older now and there's no need to, we don't bring them up. If I talk to him, I may say, how is your dad doing? But that's the most of it, that I get into it. But that's when he was younger, I just never talked about him. And I think that people need to kind of adapt that, right? Like, don't talk about the other parent to the kid because your kid still loves their other parent, right? Just because you don't like this person, just because y'all got into a fight, just because this person cheated, if he didn't cheat on his son or he didn't cheat on his kids, right? It's just something that y'all went through. And it's kind of hard for women to separate that part, I'm gonna say. But for me, I never talked about him. He was kind of non-existent. But that was my bitterness. That's how I carried it. Towards his dad.
Mm. But it's freezing a little bit on my end, so I'm sorry if I'm a little delayed here. I don't know if it's me or what's going on, but um, so I want to fast forward once again. And on this podcast, recently we've talked a lot about parenting adult children. So what has that process been like for you now that, Pops is involved? What has the co-parenting process of an adult child been like for you?
The having an adult child, I would tell you, it's more scary than having an infant baby. It's so scary to have an adult child, the things that I worry about, like I live a very simple life, right? I always tell people I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't go to clubs, um, I don't do those kinds of things, right? So I don't have to worry about that for me, right? But then when you have an adult child that hangs out. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Like, wait, I heard this happen. Let me call him, make sure everything is let me make sure he's safe. You know what I mean? And it's so scary when you have an adult child. The co-parenting part with an adult child, when my son graduated, his dad was there. I took a picture, because this again, you always have to step outside of yourself when it comes down to, your kids, right? So the picture wasn't for me. The picture was for my son to have a memory of his mother and his father. Once he graduated on his graduation day, which was a beautiful day, right? So, we took pictures together. We don't really talk, me and his dad. I think the last time I spoke to him maybe was like 2 years ago on the phone. But anytime he wants to call, if he ever needed to call for anything, I wouldn't not answer his phone call because that's my son's dad. But so I haven't spoken to him to answer the question. I haven't spoken to him recently. If I ever need to call him, I know that I can call him, but we don't speak. So when my son graduated, he was there. He did participate in all the festivities. He was present. He was present, and I appreciated him showing up. And then you know what? He thanked me. He thanked me when my son graduated. He thanked me. He said, "Thank you for being the mom that you have been and getting our son to college." And he did thank me. He was like, because, this is not typical. My son went straight from high school straight to college and finished college. And so he was like that, this is not typical. And he was like, I want to thank you for instilling the education in him and pushing him because I was on his back about graduate. I was like on his back. Y'all wouldn't even believe how much I was on his back about graduating. But he did thank me for that. And then, I was just like, that made me feel good, that he saw that, all my efforts, because, it was only, again, it's just about my son and making sure that he is, a good man. And that's what really made me feel good. That made me feel good when he did that, when he said that to me.
Hey, congratulations to you, all of y'all, on that family accomplishment. But a wise man recognizes when, the mom has done what she needed to do, especially if he hasn't been there on the day to day. It is a tremendous accomplishment. So congratulations to you on that. So speaking of, hey, you want your son to be a good man. What advice or frameworks have you given him on handling relationships? He's seen you navigate things with his dad. He's probably heard stories. He knows the family history of really, hey, nobody being married, right? No
Yeah,
dads being around. And now you
yeah,
have this 29-year-old man who, I don't know if he's married or with somebody, but he's on the cusp of shouldering a lot of responsibility if he invites somebody else into his life. What wisdom have you given him on navigating that?
a relationship. Um, So to be honest with you, I did tell him like he does have his girlfriend. They've been together for 6 years, and I told him if she was to get pregnant, immediately do the custody. Do not wait. Don't wait until y'all fighting. Don't wait until y'all break up. Right? File for custody when y'all still together. The reason I say that, right, is because ain't nobody mad. Ain't nobody mad at that point. So no one's going to fight you in court. Nobody's going to be in court with 89 attorneys trying to make sure that you don't get visitations for your kids. So I did tell him as soon as she has a baby, make sure that you file for joint custody, physical and legal custody of your kids. I
It
just feel like
was
when it's
married is I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off because I didn't want to lose my thought because I'm old. Was marriage even on the on the plate, like as a suggestion?
yeah, well, I definitely told him that he needs to be married. I definitely told him that he needs to first get himself and his finances straight. Then he needs to be married before he even has a kid. But if he's not married, make sure he files for the custody as soon as he has the baby. Do not wait until you guys are fighting. Do not wait until y'all break up because if you wait until you break up, it is going to be brutal and it's going to be a battle from like you are going to be fighting like you're in a war. So just, you know, um, do it fast, do it, while everything is still good and harmonious, file for the custody. So, and the reason that I say that is because at that point, people are willing to talk, right? Like people are willing, she's not going to be arguing with you. She's not going to be secretive about what her true intentions are. She's not going to just make up lies on you and say, you was doing stuff that you weren't doing just so she can get full custody of the kid. So make sure that you, do that um, make sure that you do that sooner than later. That's the one piece of advice. Then, I have my second child that I have. The reason that made me say that is because my second child, my custody battle, I paid my attorney 23,000 cash. It was a 3-year nightmare that literally I could write a book about. So that right there, that's why I told him that immediately as soon as she has the baby, file for custody because that my battery died, y'all.
Oh,
Oh.
oh, okay. I was telling John, we was just getting to the juicy part.
Yeah, I don't remember where I left off at.
And it's okay. But one thing I want to talk about is something that you said that I don't think I've ever heard before and was very interesting to me. And we've interviewed, I don't know, about 40, 50 people now. And, I've lived the co parenting life. And you talked about if you're not married, go get that custody settled right now. And it's
Right.
it's like the prenup, but it's like a pre-cuss. And so
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
that that is very interesting to me. So where did that thought come from in your head? Did you hear it somewhere else, or is it yours to own?
Yeah. Well, you said
That is,
you went through it with your second child, and that's what made you feel that
yeah,
way, right?
yes, yes, yes. So my second child's relationship, that was a totally different relationship. That was somebody I was married to. And never in a billion years, no one could have ever told me that that would have happened, right? The way that it happened, how it happens. When people are angry with you for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Y'all have differences. Y'all could have had the best relationship. People could have saw your relationship and wanted it. That's how good it was, right? It doesn't, sometimes things
Mm,
come to an end and that person is a totally different person. They're not the same person that you were in a relationship with. They're not the same person that you went on vacations with. That's not the same person. And so for me, my experience was not the best. So I think that everybody, not just women, should do that. I think men should too. One, you have a child for somebody and you guys are not married, the very first thing you should do when that child is within the first 30 days, if the dad signed that affidavit saying he is the father of the child, go file for child support. Go file for custody, not child support. Go file for custody. And that's because, and the reason why is because everyone is still good, right? So if you ask me a question while me and you are still good, you're going to get a different answer versus if you ask that same question when we're fighting. You're not going to get that answer from me. You're not going to get that response. You're not going to get that work. I'm not going to work with you the same way that I would if me and you were still intimate, if we were still good. My response is going to be different. So I told my son that, I told him straight up, like, if you and this young lady have a baby, and I don't know if this is going to last, if it is good, if not, you have to worry about yourself and you have to make sure that you are still able to be a dad in your child's life without someone telling you you can come from 5 to 8 to see your child and make sure your child is back home by 8 p.m. or else. You understand what I'm saying? Or else. So, um, but yeah, my lawyer for my custody I paid this woman $23,000 cash to work my custody agreement out and to get my custody, and that was because I was dealing with high conflicts and was not willing to be flexible at anything at all. Um, and I was with him for 20 years. and it was still it was rough. So that taught me a lot, and that's what I told that was the my advice to my son when it came down to having a child with someone that you're not married with.
Yeah, that's a tough life lesson. That is
Yeah.
really, really tough.
Very
One
much.
thing, since we both have kids around the same age, Shamika, my oldest is 32, and
Okay.
I have him pretty much, every 2 years working down to 21. And one thing,
Okay.
yeah, hey, and one thing recently with one of my sons, we were having some one-on-one time, and we were talking about girls and stuff like that, and he pretty much said straight out that he was gun shy about being married because what he had seen in my life. Like he
Uh-huh.
couldn't see himself shouldering that responsibility. He was fearful. Wasn't that he didn't want it, but he was just fearful of how things could turn out. And I had to like speak to him and say, "You're going to do it different than me.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
you're capable of doing it." Did you see any of that in your adult son when he started to get into dating or his feelings about marriage or anything like that?
He definitely, you know what he said to me? He did say that about marriage. He said that he was like, I don't know if I really want to get married. And I said, well, why you say that? Like what would make you say you don't want to get married? You need to get married. That is something that you should be, focused on. There's no boyfriends in the Bible. I said, so, you need to get that in your mind that you want to be somebody's husband. And he just said, I just saw what you went through, and then his dad was actually married twice. And so he saw what his dad went through. His dad is not married anymore. And then he was just like, I just saw what both of y'all went through. I don't know if I want that for myself. And I told him the same. I said, you're going to have a different experience. And hopefully, from what you saw, that will make you not go down those same avenues that, me and your dad went down. And, as far as, marriage. But I was like, don't wear that like it's going to happen to you because it may not happen to you, right? You may get in a situation and it could just be all good, right? You could find that perfect person and everything is all good. And, so I was like, I don't want you to carry that. And then he also said to me, I don't know if I want to have kids. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, I saw what you went through. And I was just like, that don't mean it's going to happen to you. That may not happen to you. You may not
Mm.
go through what I went through. It may not be as hard on you as it was on me. It may not. You may find somebody that is just easygoing. Um, y'all click. You may find, the sweetest woman and everything is good. So I was like, don't feel that way. But he did say that. The same thing that your son said, he did say that to me. That was, a feeling that he had.
Yeah, that was surprising. You talk about when we started talking about adult children, how difficult it is. And there's these things that you discover. And I don't know if it's maybe your kids are more comfortable sharing those things or they just reach a point in their own maturity where they're very aware of what they feel they can do and what they don't want to do and they feel comfortable sharing it. And so it wasn't something I expected. I'd seen it in one of my sons, but this one that I went out with, I wasn't expecting that to be in his mind. So I was wondering if you
Yeah.
had that same experience. I
Yeah.
just have one last question, well, second last question, and before the end is what advice would you give well, one thing, what do you think men don't understand about single moms and what they're holding as they're parenting and kind of navigating things alone?
What I think that men do not understand is that we have emotions and we have different feelings than men. Men don't have the same feelings that we have about our children, about relationships. And I think that because it's a difference in that part, they don't quite understand. Men don't quite understand how hard it is for a 21-year-old mom to drop her 4-month-old baby off. Right? They don't understand that. They just automatically think, oh, she's trying to keep my child. She doesn't want me to spend time with my child. She's trying to keep my child from me. And it's like, we got different feelings, you know. Um, I don't think that men quite understand that, like what that's like, what that feeling is like. So it's interpreted to a man differently than how we're feeling inside. It is like agony. It is like it is like the worst. Like I got to drop my sweet innocent baby off. Like I don't want to drop my baby. I don't want my baby to have to be split between this household and that household. And for a man, it's just like, well, this is my child too. Just bring my child over here. And it's like I don't know if I could, if I don't know, right? So one thing I will say that I wish men could just kind of understand that feeling, because that's a feeling. That's not spite. That's not a retaliation thing. That's not, oh, I'm just going to get my lick back, and he did this to me, so he can't see his child, and it's not like that. It's kind of, it is very, very, very hard. We carry the child for 9 months inside of us, so when a baby comes out, it is really hard to, even just daycare. I'm gonna put it even a broader perspective. Even to drop your infant baby off at a daycare center, it is hard to do that for a young mom that is connected to her baby and even have to drop the baby off at daycare. I remember I used to cry. Like I used to cry when I had to drop him off and do the stuff that I had to do just to the daycare center, because it's just not something that I wanted to do. It wasn't anything like that. So I think, I don't know if it's a lesson, but I just,
Oh man. Oh man. Well, I can't hear you now.
That's because the audio was on mute. That's why.
Oh, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But that was my last question. I hope that it caught it.
Yeah,
what
I think
happened?
so.
Hi, I'm
There she
back.
comes.
I don't know what's going on. It was raining here. I don't know.
We go.
Y'all in Maryland?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're in PG County.
Yeah.
PG County? Yeah, it is. I'm in Baltimore County. It is raining here, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Um, but I don't know if
It
that's
might. It
the,
might.
it might. Okay. We were talking about the lesson about that. I don't know if that's a lesson, but I just wish more men understood that feeling, right? Because then that would kind of take the she's trying to alienate me out of their mind. They just understood that one specific feeling of how much of anxiety that creates to have to drop your baby off to anybody. Like I said, even a daycare center. I used to cry, So, um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I think one of the first steps in allowing men to understand that process is having conversations like this, right? Because quite frankly, we may never understand that because we didn't hold the baby for 9 months. So that experience is drastically different for us. Of course, there are men that are absolutely capable and willing to feel those feels. But the conversations where the woman is able to voice that to the man in an articulate way, just as you did, is the first step in that process. Because like we all say, no one's a mind reader, so no one knows what's going on. We only have our own interpretations based on our own experiences in life. But
Yeah.
so my question then is on the opposite end of that. And Kelly asks, what do men need to understand? And I'm going to ask, what do you think women need to understand about the co-parenting that maybe some of them are missing? Because it sounds like you did a very good job of reflecting throughout the co-parenting process and made adjustments when your maturity allowed you to make those adjustments. So what do women need to do better?
We got to understand that men love their kids too.
Mm,
Now, let me tell you why that's a little hard to see, right? Because men and women are different. We are wired different. We don't think the same at all, at all, at all,
hmm
right? So we just have to understand that just because he doesn't hug the child
80 billion times a day and kisses the child 80 billion times a day. And we have to understand that that doesn't mean that he doesn't love his child, right? It doesn't mean that. It's just men are different than women are when it comes down to, just how we express our love. Women, we are touchy. We want to touch. We want love. We want to show love. We want to express ourselves. But men are kind of different in that regard. So just because he doesn't do that doesn't mean he doesn't love his child, right? And so women need to understand that just because you show your love and affection and everything how you feel about your child doesn't mean that because he doesn't do the same thing, he doesn't mean that he doesn't love his child. He still loves his child. It's just that men express themselves differently, right? And they show their love differently. They show their love through teaching. They show their love through spending time. They show their love different ways. But I think that more women have to understand that. That's something I had to learn too. Um, because with my oldest son, I felt that was my first son. I felt like he deserved everything, right? He deserved the stars and the moon, and he deserved he deserved everything. And then his dad was just like, "You giving him too much." And I was offended, right? And I was
Hmm.
offended that he was even saying that to me. And I was mad, like, I had an attitude, right? I was just like, "What are you talking about? Of course he deserves everything. Like, what's wrong with you?" And I had to learn that. I had to really learn that myself. And then as I grew and I matured, and then that's when I was like, oh, he just shows it differently. It's not a lack there. It's just differently, how men express themselves. So I think once women really understand that part, that, the love is there. He wants to be present. He wants to be a dad, that doesn't mean you can't be a mom, but he wants to be a dad too. Once they really understand that and like get that upstairs, then I think things would be better, but sometimes it's hard, right? It's hard. And it took me a long time, like I
Hmm.
said, because I didn't have a dad. I didn't
Hmm.
He was non-existent. So, that took me a very long time to realize that he still loved his kid, even though he just expressed his love differently.
And I'll say the same thing that I said in regards to your response to Kelly's. It's our job as men now to voice that and communicate that to women. Like, hey, listen, just because I didn't give him 100 kisses today, the fact that I, gave him a little boom, that's the love, right? The
Yeah.
fact that I shook him around and played with him like that, that's the love. It's not the kissing and the hugging. So it's our job then to communicate that to y'all, just like it's your job to communicate, hey, this is how I feel to us.
Yep. Yep. Just I had to realize that, he picked him up from school. He's concerned. He up to school. What's his teacher's name? What you got going on? That's love right there, but we want to just kiss the baby all day,
Even when he's
hug on him
29.
all day. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that about y'all, but basically, you're putting it in the simplest terms is communication and
Mm.
Yeah.
mature reflection and
Yeah.
growth. And that is part and parcel of what we try to tell the men is you have to get on this journey to mature as a man so you can bring your best self to the co-parenting and the best self, and demonstrate great manhood for your child. But
That's
it's
it.
work. It's work. I wish we had more time to talk about, and we really didn't get a chance to talk about your tribe because nobody's an island. I mean, you're an independent lady. You've obviously held it down for your kid, but you had to have at least some girlfriends or some aunties or somebody around you that said, "Hey, think about this or do this," or "Girl, I don't know about do that." So maybe that's another episode we talk about the tribe because that's one thing we definitely tell the men is that you have to have a tribe of guys around you that are fit for this journey. Otherwise, you can really get out of pocket quickly and get to a dark place. Um, but maybe we can pick up on that next time.
Yes, absolutely. I would be willing to talk about that. The tribe and who helped me because it wasn't just me. I had people around me, so most definitely. And then can I say a little suggestion to the men, please?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
thing I will say is that will help the journey that will help the journey when you are co-parenting, if you have a high conflict co-parent or whatever the case is to always remember when y'all was in a relationship, you spoke differently. Now that y'all are not in a relationship, now you speak differently. I think that men have to understand that just because y'all broke up, just because y'all not together, just because people are hurt, and it's really hard when you hurt to do this. Still speak to the person the way that you did when y'all was in a relationship. If you didn't cuss at the person, if you wasn't cussing the person out, if you wasn't arguing, don't do it now because y'all not together, because that is going to spread things out for years and years and years and years and years. If y'all have a small fight and you still cussing her out, it can go on for 2-3 years where you're not invited to nothing, right? So I would just say to men, if I could just leave a bit suggestion, just the way you used to talk to her while y'all was in a relationship, or if you wasn't as, I'm gonna say, aggressive, just be that same person. I know it's hard. It's really hard. It's really, really hard to do that. I had to learn that piece myself. Um, because if not, you'll be fighting and you'll be at a standstill. I'll put it like that. You'll be at a standstill and not able to accomplish what you really want to, the main goal is just to be there for your child, right? And to be present. So if I could just say that, just no arguing, just if you ain't got nothing nice to say, just because it's gonna drag it out. It's gonna drag it out for longer than what it should be.
Well,
Well
thank
said.
you for sharing that. And most of all, thank you for your authentic conversation with us. That was amazing. And to be quite completely honest, I thought this was going to go in a little bit of a different direction based on how we met, but you were really unbiased and really just what's the word I'm looking for? You're very reflective, and what came out was just a lot of good stuff. And thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome, and thank y'all for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I was a little nervous. I combed my hair for y'all because I was not looking like this 2 hours ago. I was like, "Let me just fix myself up." And,
Hey, you
but
know
thank you for
what?
having me
It's
on here. I
funny.
really appreciate it. Yes.
Hey, the ladies are serious about that appearance on, you know.
Yeah.
V, when she first got on, there was a makeup artist doing
There
her.
was. I
I could just
said,
see the.
well, your crew was tightening you up, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that. I mean,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
you're fine. However you showed up was going to be fine.
Okay. And then my
All
next
right.
question.
Until next time, I'm John.
I'm,
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, when is this gonna air? Like, when is this? Or maybe I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I should have probably asked when you
Oh
was
yeah.
finished.
I'll do the. I'll get to that in a second. Until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Kelly.
Peace.